development costs, ladies and gentlemen, including planned development and planned movement of people will be less costly, but development alone costs. And CCMT is saying, ladies and gentlemen, with one planet Earth, we need to have a right for everyone to live, have a good housing, have good medicine, have good education, have a good life.
And we were informed of their intention to relocate us. Now what happened there was the beginning of a conflict. And we were told to register. Only 8 out of 69 households registered. These people, the 8 households, were moved to the new place or to the new farm. They were just ferried there by using a lorry. No money given to them to support. Remember, these people had houses, they had huts. In other words, I'm talking about shelter. They were moved to a place where there was no shelter. They were moved to a place where there was no protected source of water, meaning things like boreholes, no clinics. Imagine what happened to those people. We remained in a conflict for 23 years. And no development took place in our area or around Mataga Growth Point, now known as Mataga Growth Point.
The first one being national infrastructure, which covers our roads, our dams, and the irrigation programs. And these projects normally have a certain trajectory. A dam will normally go in a valley. And if my memory serves me well, there was actually a mapping of a national dams project for the country. Then the second one is the issue of settlements, expansions, your growth points. These were identified, and from history you can establish a trajectory of the direction and speed with which these settlements are happening. Why can we not do forward planning for those settlements so that people are forewarned that within such an estimated timeline you may be moved, so that we then plan ahead of the displacement or the eviction. Then the other one that we may be a little bit of a challenge is mining. I think we also have a national minerals map of some kind which tells us what minerals are there. It may not be in detail, but they are indicatory and gives us an idea of where minerals are and what mines may be established.
If we now go back to our Midlands situation, it indicates that land is finite. We may then have to say, if we are talking compensation, and this compensation is departing from being based on land, then what form of compensation should it be? Unfortunately now, what we are having, especially in our A1, A2 settlement schemes, is where people have been resettled. And now, more or less, like as an afterthought, we are saying, we need a clinic here, we need a secondary school. And then we are going back to say, sorry, you should move away, we want to put a school here. Sorry, you should move away, we want to put a clinic here.
Yes, our challenges as local authorities, mostly it has to do with lack of knowledge. They say knowledge is power, and where there is no knowledge, where there is no wisdom, the people perish. There is a general lack of awareness and understanding of policies and legislation. The other challenge that we are facing is that of resources, resource constraints. We find that most of our local authorities have not to date considered these issues seriously, maybe to the extent of budgeting for them in their annual budgets. We are saying if we could also have maybe fiscal support from central government, and there is no standard framework. That lack of standardization also creates conflict.
Before we implement any project, we undertake a comprehensive environmental and social impact assessment study, and comes up eventually with what is called a resettlement action plan. So before we start any action on the ground to implement the project, we are supposed to take care of the people that are negatively affected by the project, either through displacement or loss of what is called their economic base. So we talk of physical displacement and economic displacement. What we found out is that the relocation process begins well after the project has already commenced, which is one thing as the bank we are trying to correct in terms of the way the government is implementing its projects. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing as a bank. We cannot be seen to put money into a project that negatively affects people, that negatively affects the environment. The basic guidelines which we use is that the affected people should not be left worse off than they were before the project. And that is our aspiration. We aspire to see the affected people being better off than what they were before the project.
Then also related to the issue of compensation, we also need to reflect on how we structure compensation mechanism. Should compensation be a once-off thing? That we are going to build to establish a road, we're going to build a dam, therefore we give people say $1,000 per household. Is that enough? Because compensation can also be reworked in a way where we have say profit sharing schemes with those people who develop dams. I think there's also need for us to disaggregate the impacts of development-induced displacement on communities, because the impacts of development-induced displacements differ according to gender. Women at times suffer more than men. We have a number of laws that suggest that when there are development projects, people have to be compensated. But I think one of the key questions that we have to ask is, are these guidelines legally enforceable?
Last, I would concur with what the CEO for Runde said in terms of there's need to come up with a clear-cut policy framework with clear guidelines on relocations and compensation.
The Ministry of Lands deals with what we define as agricultural land. And if you look at the Constitution, it actually defines that land that we now can say is commercial agricultural land, where we have resettled people. So, in terms of our discourse, legislation is available for that category of land. And I believe in the communal setup we've had, there's also legislation that is there. Maybe the issue is how do we look at these pieces of legislation to ensure that we harmonize so that we guide the district and provincial sub-national levels to ensure that they have a harmonized approach to it. But we are there to look at requirements and requests from sub-national levels as regards the alternative land. But I want to emphasize the issue of consultation, which I have seen is lacking. It's not there. Let's consult at those levels. Let all the parties in government, local authority, development partners, CSOs be involved in consulting the people so that they know the situation on the ground and you get some kind of agreement as we move forward.
The lessons of the past decade vividly show us that tenure security or insecurity does not necessarily derive from the nature of the regime, of the tenure regime. It actually emanates from a wider political setting and the capacity to administrate and also the ability to ensure the property rights. There were also some people who had the permits, but they were relocated. So my question is, do we have what we call a tenure security when we have people who have the permits also being dispossessed?
Even where dialogue is explicitly promoted, sometimes you have two parties that are unequal parties. You have multinationals in some cases that have a lot of power, and you have local communities. And those sort of issues need to be looked at with respect to guidelines as how to empower even when people dialogue. But we also need to understand that they are at international level, both at the UN and the African Union level, that provide us with guidelines with respect to what at country level we need to have in place in order to deal with these issues. Because these issues are not peculiar to Zimbabwe.
I know Zimbabwe has got beautiful laws in place, and also Zimbabwe is part of a lot of treaties and has signed a lot of international laws, and Zimbabwe already has these things in place. But the problem that comes, that I am seeing in most of these laws, is the implementation part of how these laws are going to be implemented.
I would like to allude to the fact one of the panelists mentioned when they spoke about cultural sites. They spoke of certain rituals that need to be performed, which is a very true fact. And all I can probably guide the House is that through dialogue, when you come and we sit down.
When someone is going to be relocated, they may be relocated spatially in space, from A to B. They may be relocated economically in terms of from farming to something else. I think when we're talking about a framework, which is what local authorities were very clear about, at least from the notes that I took, we need a standard framework, a national framework that then says if someone is going to be spatially relocated, where they will need an alternative space, land, then what is it that is going to happen? Those details need to come out. If they are going to be economically relocated, what is it that is going to happen? Are they going to get a job? What is it that is going to happen? So I think we've had a discussion that asks questions about the minimum provisions, the levels of the provisions, the responsibilities for financing that. We hear private sector or the development proponent, we hear the state, and the budgets of local authorities needing to go beyond to follow their strategic plans rather than their current plans. For as long as the framework of incentives we have at the moment enables a traditional leader or a councillor or a baron or someone to allocate land, no amount of laws will protect us from that reality. The security of tenure is not inherent in the type or type of document that we hold. I may be more secure without a permit than someone with a title deed. Because the political economy is what protects your right to anything. So until we deal with the political economy issues that are undermining the laws that we have, perhaps we need more dialogue than litigation. Perhaps if we're litigating, we're building case law to enable models for us to then come up with better laws. Because I think the point I want to end up with was the agreement we have that there is no value, and actually there isn't even a risk, that this investment in unhappy citizens, this investment in disenfranchised citizens is not good for the citizens, it's not good for the state, it's not good for even business, it's not good for anyone. And at some level, we can't continue like this. That's the point I want to end in. So the performance of our public institutions needs to be strengthened so that we can have these dialogues and we know the outcomes of those deliberations will be implemented. And then citizens also will implement the outcome of some of those conversations.